Welcome, JS, to the podcast. I've been following JS for a while on social media. He talks about all things social media. So, first of all, give him a follow when you can. But I'm excited to chat about social media with him today.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. We've kind of crossed paths a bit on various platforms, and I'm glad to finally connect.
I want to first ask you this question because I think to clarify for everybody out there, like why is the role of social media so important?
Social media is really the front door, front porch of your brand, right? It's where people are going to interact with you, outside of like your physical location. Like that's where they're going to interact with you most these days. And your social media manager is the one right out there who is interacting with your customers, your clients, who's putting out content that represents you and your brand and talking back and forth with customers in the comments and doing community management and all of that. So it's really, the front lines of your communications with whoever you want to speak with now. And I think maybe 10 years ago when it was first starting out, people thought, oh, we could put an intern in charge of it or whatever. But now it's just become too important. And you really need a professional who is, going to handle that responsibility and is trained to do it and can do it well.
Yeah. And then the secondary question, because I think this sets up the conversation, is there's people who do social media and there's a social media manager. So like, could you give like the difference between those two?
The way I like to compare it, it's like just because you have a car doesn't make you a mechanic. And the same is true for social media. Just about everybody has a social media account. They can post on their own, they can do stuff, but when you need it for a brand and you need somebody to actually communicate with a large group of people, you need to have a professional social media manager who knows the ins and outs of the strategy, how the platforms work, and can craft content that's going to resonate with your audience.
Obviously, I know social media has a lot of roles in the social media, and it takes a lot of different types of talent to do it. It's not only like I'm scheduling content. You talked about a lot of things you've already, um, posting content, strategizing of your brand, community management. There's now like editing's becoming into play. Like video content's even more important than ever. So there's all these different roles that become mushed into one, but it's also one of the most undervalued, underpaid roles out there. And why do you think that is? Why and how could we like what would your pitch to leadership right now be like why you should pay social media managers more
Oh my
than you
goodness.
think they are?
How much time do you have? We could go into this all day about the myriad roles we expect out of social media managers and the evolving role that social media managers play. I think we need to get to a point where a social media manager is seen more akin to like a creative director who is overseeing a team of creatives to craft content for social, to help strategize, to look at the analytics and decide what to do next, rather than doing it all by themselves. Now, that's not a viable thing for every single brand and every single company. The teams can be smaller. You do have like that army of one social media manager who has to do it all. I think we need to recognize how much work a social media manager does and pay them properly for it. You wouldn't want somebody completely unexperienced who you wouldn't hand them a microphone in front of thousands of people and say, hey, go represent my company without any sort of PR training or anything at all. So why do so many brands think, oh, I can just have an entry-level employee or an intern run our social media? You're asking for trouble. That's not to say that there aren't roles for interns and entry-level employees. You have to get your start somewhere, but they should always be working with a trained social media manager who knows how to represent a brand. So, my pitch, to executives is more about all the things that can go wrong. Is it worth the risk to save the money on, on your social media. We see stories all the time of social media managers going rogue or somebody making a slip up that costs the brand lots of mistakes, and it causes a lot of bad publicity for the brand. So it's really important that you have somebody who has that trained experience and knowledge and is also in tune with what's going on in the social world in ways that you do not. The internet is a infinite place, right? I work in the entertainment industry now, and it always surprises me. I feel like I'm a very online person. I'm very knowledgeable about various influencers, what trends are big, but no matter how much there's always some like YouTube creator who has millions and millions of followers that you've never heard of. So you need somebody who really is online and understands the online environment that your customers are in, where to best recognize them, what trends are in, what things are not good for you to post. I always say it's kind of hard to quantify a negative of like, but how many times I've saved brands by saying, hey, let's rethink posting that. You need that person.
Yeah, I mean, the 1.2 is like you said, there's so many pockets of the internet, and especially now, there's so many micro communities that if you're not in that or understand that micro community, you could speak out, say the wrong thing, or just be tuned out because you're not speaking their language or speaking how they or posting a trend that they don't care about, or like going down a path that you might turn them off of your brand for a long time if you do that. I want to go also. So I know there's a pitch for you to tell me why leadership should care, but how can, and there's a lot of social media managers who listen to this, like how could they advocate better for themselves internally to make sure they are getting the right treatment, getting the right pay, getting the right respect internally?
Communication and training, those are two of the biggest things. Share both your wins and losses honestly with your higher ups. Let them know what's going on. I would even in a Slack channel, you get those comments that say, give your social media manager a raise, or somebody says something nice about that. Screen cap it and send it. It's cringe. It doesn't feel comfortable doing it, but like no one else is going to advocate for you, right? Your boss, unless you share with them the good things people say about what you're doing, their chances are they're not going to see it. So you need to be the person putting that in front of them. And then just education. One thing I did when I was the social media manager at Texas State University is once a semester, I would hold a social media training session for anybody at the university who wanted to come and learn more about what we did in the marketing office with social media, why we did it. If you have an event that you want promoted, how to get that promoted on our social media, all the things that entail in the decision-making process behind every post. And those were very well attended. People would come and, so I had a few that were standing room only. But that helped out a lot in people understanding, that it wasn't just random posting, that there was a strategy behind it. And that word got out around campus as well. So you've got to get out there and really educate people about what you're doing. Ask your boss if they have time. Have them shadow you, like say, hey, I honestly believe that social media managers should be in the executive inner circle. Right. Invite yourself to those meetings, where those decisions are made. One thing that really helped me get in with, executives in some of the companies and organizations I've worked with was as terrible as it is crisis comm. I've been through floods, tornadoes, all sorts of things. I started my career doing higher ed, and it felt like there was a crisis almost every other day. But being in those meetings and showing our, VPs and president, like, this is what we're doing on social media. Here's a report of what's going on. Whether you ask for it or not, here it is. And slowly but surely, they start to understand the impact that you're having.
I think that skill you just said, I think every marketer could think about doing that, because I think internal marketing for any role now, especially ones that are undervalued, is as important as what you're doing as a social media manager and getting the brand out there. So those trainings, those internal communications, the sharing of the wins, like you have to be your best PR person internally. Otherwise, no, like you said, nobody's going to do it for you.
Exactly.
Maybe if you have a good manager, they might do it, but you can't rely on your manager to do that for you.
Oh, exactly. I when at one university I worked at, my boss led the media relations department, and professors, when they would go out and speak at conferences or whatever, and they would send a little thing to us to make a press release about and put it on the front page of the university website. And I'll be honest with you, nobody read those except other people at the university. So, once I spoke at a conference and was like, hey, why are we not putting this on the front page of the website just like we do for professors and things like that? It's like my boss said, to like, we don't really talk about our department. I'm like, well, we should. We need to. Let's get that out there. There was one we put out that, a professor appears on a podcast, and I had been on like 6 podcasts that year. I was like, we need to let the university know what we're doing, especially when you're working with faculty and professors who are incredibly smart, but they're going out and presenting and doing things at conferences, and we needed to share, hey, we're doing that too. We're also professionals in our field. So yeah, you've got to toot your own horn, and it feels weird to do, but no one else is going to do it for you. I even still, like, I every time I post like a win on LinkedIn, I feel like, oh, people are going to think I'm braggy before I post on that, but no one else is going to do it for you. So you got to do it.
I know you're coming out with a book soon, and I want to just, you don't have to share all the nitty gritty that people could get, but I like, I know it's 10 principles of social media marketing, if I'm correct, but I like, what are some like core, like what is one or two core principles, if you could share, that every
Yeah.
social media, like manager or every social media team needs to know to be successful in social media?
Yeah, sure can. Yeah, the name of the book is The 10 Principles of Effective Social Media Management. It's coming out in September, and each chapter covers a different principle that I think is core to being to effective social media management that is never changing. The challenge of writing a book on social media management is that, by the time it's written and printed and published and gets out to the consumer, it's outdated. So I tried to think of core principles that just will be universal to social media management. Fingers crossed for a very, very, very long time. But things like, there's one chapter about effective social media management needs a budget. Right? It's free the way a puppy is free. You can go to the animal shelter and pick up a puppy, but you've got to feed it, you've got to take care of it. And in that chapter, we really break down all of the things that you need to spend money on for social media management, from not just the paid social side, but like what equipment your social media manager needs, professional development opportunities for your social media manager, because we need to go out. The field changes so often that if we're not constantly learning, we're falling behind. Another effective principle is that social media management is a team effort. And we talk about all the different roles, kind of like we were talking earlier, where, what sort of team structure that you have, in ways that smaller teams of one, it's still going to be a team effort, because everyone, if you only have a social media manager on your social media team and nobody else, it falls down to other people at your company are going to have to start taking on a few roles to help them out, to help share possible stories, get them content ideas, help represent the brand on social media. So those are two big ones. Another one that we talk about is accessibility, and being sure that your social media content is accessible to people with hearing impairments and visual impairments, and how making accessible content makes the content better for everyone. So we cover, I was going to say we cover a lot of principles, but we cover 10 big ones. So the ones that I think are most important. So those are a few of them.
I want to go down the first one you just said, because I actually was at a conference a few weeks ago, and Gary Vee was on stage, and he said that like the brands that are not investing basically like 20% of the marketing budget on social media creative and content that's organic social media that you could test before you put it on paid or anything like that is those brands are going to fail, because we're in the era of like the algorithms are changing to intent based algorithms. Like there are ways that things are going to go viral, and if you and like you're just wasting money if you just put a random creative on a paid social that would never work on organic and think it's going to actually work on organic. So what are your thoughts on, I mean, we're talking about budget, but what are your thoughts of like how much of the marketing budget should actually be dedicated to this organic social media effort? What is your thought on that?
Oh man, and again, that organic, people think it is free, but it is
Mm-hmm.
not. Just because you can make the post and hit send on it, or the thing that really gets under my skin is it's just social media, and besides, lo-fi content does better anyway. It's not the fact that the content is lo-fi or low quality or feels like somebody just did with their phone. It's the story you're telling, whether it's a low production value or a high production value. Like it's the story behind it. Like that's not an excuse to have subpar content, right? And you need talent to do that. You need people who are creative. You need, I think it's so funny. We talk about all the roles we ask of social media managers, from being able to not just understand every single platform, what's working, but we also ask them to be graphic designers, video editors, also good writers. And on top of that, for a lot of brands, we ask social media managers to be funny, which is a completely different skill set entirely. Not everybody has, right? We don't recognize that as a skill like we do, like understanding Excel or, whatever, being able to put together a good slide deck. Humor is a skill. So there are so many things we ask them to do, and we need to pay them fairly for that. You're not going to get the funniest person or somebody that knows social media and pay them peanuts and have them stay for a long time. So you need to invest in a good social media manager, because not only is it the skill of a social media manager, your social media manager understands the ins and outs of your brand. They know the brand voice. They know everyone at your company, right? They know when I'm coming and I say, okay, I need to get something and some photos from you or something like that. We kind of know where the bodies are buried. We know the things not to say on social. So when you lose a social media manager, when they move on, the institutional knowledge that you lose along with that is so hard to replace. So it is worth it to pay your social media managers well. And I'm not talking about, just an enormous salary or anything like that, which would be great, it's fantastic, but something reasonable that it's not an entry level salary.
It's funny because a social media manager can't hide behind a paid spend budget for the creative. Like with a paid social person could put a creative, put spend behind it. It can get a lot of impressions, but doesn't mean that creative was good. Like a social media manager is like tied to like having to know like that this will resonate with my audience, resonate with the algorithm. This format works on this platform. This is the type of content that is gonna it works with our brand. Also, what you said, like the institutional knowledge. I've been so many places where like if you post this, the CEO would ream the marketing team. Like, and not many people will know that. Like the CEO might ream the market if you say two or three words wrong or something.
Yeah, exactly. Like in higher ed, there's a whole sort of lingo that, housing doesn't like you to say dorm. They want you to say residence life or residence hall, which, I think with the audience, it's confusing, but that's neither here nor there. But we do have one of the few jobs at any company where everyone from the CEO to the intern in the mailroom see the product of your work and have a very strong opinion of it. And that's to say nothing of your customers. Imagine if every email that you sent out was seen by everybody in your company and all of your customers and scrutinized for every little mistake, error, or typo. That's what social media managers do every day, basically, right? Every post we send out, is absolutely scrutinized. So it's a high pressure job. It requires a lot of talent. There's very little room for error. Mistakes will happen because just the sheer volume of it. So I think brands need to understand that, and social media managers should be compensated accordingly.
A couple questions, just like general questions, because I know these come up with like asks that social media gets. So what are your, like, if someone came up to social media manager and says like, hey, we need to be on XYZ channel, or we need to be on these 5 channels to be successful, like, and as a social media manager, you really need to be on Instagram and LinkedIn, maybe, like, how do you go push back and say like, hey, like, we don't need that to be posting there, or we don't need to be investing all that time when I can be really successful on these 2 channels and help us grow the business?
Yeah. It kind of comes back to that education and building that rapport where you need a boss that kind of trusts you a little bit, of like, when I say no, I'm not saying no because I don't want more work. I'm saying no because this is not going to help us. It's not a good use of our time. And I have the reason behind that. It can be kind of tough to like push back, especially on higher ups. Oh, my nephew said we need to be on TikTok, so why aren't we on TikTok? And it's like, well, we sell accounting software, which there can be, but it may not be the right for your specific audience at that time. So also lay out the groundwork of like what it would take to be successful on that platform, right? Okay, well, I need this many hours to create videos, and we're going to have to, I can't speak on camera, so we're going to have to hire talent for TikTok. We're going to have to do all of this. This is what's going to take to do that. I try to advocate for a less but better approach with all of my clients, of like, okay, where do we really want to zero in and focus? Because if we spread everything out, we're going to have diminishing returns. So pushing back can be really hard to do, but you have to do it respectfully. One thing I did, when I was at the Texas Department of Transportation, I felt like, I had different leadership giving me different protocol, different things they wanted out of it. So I asked my boss, I said, hey, can I send everybody in the C-suite an email and ask them, what are your 3 top goals for our social media? And they sent me their emails back, and not a duplicate answer in the bunch. Every goal was different, and they were all good goals, for the Department of Transportation. They were asking, they were saying, oh, we want to reduce traffic fatalities. We want to reduce the number of drinking and drivers. And that's excellent things you want to do. But if we asked our audience why they follow the Department of Transportation, it was because they wanted to know when the construction on the highway was going to be done, right? So I went into a meeting with all of the C-suite executives and said, hey, here are the goals that you've all sent me. Let's pick 3, right? And those are going to be our North Star goals. If it doesn't apply to one of those 3 goals, we're not doing it. And, and that gave me some leverage too to push back later on. Was like, when they said, hey, can you post this? I'd be like, well, we had that meeting and remember how we agreed what our 3 goals were? This one doesn't match that. So that's another thing. I would definitely ask your supervisor's permission before you go out sending emails to people in the C-suite, but those sort of things really do help.
I think one thing you also said is like, sometimes the audience is not gonna, like, if you ask me to post this, it's just not gonna get any like engagement, views. People are gonna stop following, and the real goal is to get this like engaged group of people who want to like keep coming back and if you're posting content like let's say like we're gonna like DUI content where people want to know, hey, there's a roadblock on this freeway today, you might stop getting people following you, and like we need people following us to keep like the lights on for social media.
Exactly. And sometimes they have reasons behind those posts that you're not aware of. So like trying to dig down and find that out. Like, when I was at a university, I had a professor who kept sending me this stuff to post that was just boring and dull. And finally I was like, found out after digging a while that his research had a grant that one of the stipulations was it had to be posted on the university social media for him to continue receiving the grant. So sometimes you have to like go, oh, I know this is going to hurt our engagement, but I see where they're coming from and why they need us to do it. So I'm going to hold my nose. I'm going to hit send on this, but and check off that box. So sometimes you do kind of have to meet them in the middle, but finding out why, the underlying reason, because sometimes it's you might be able to serve them better in another way, right? They go, oh, we want it posted, but you say, hey, this might actually work better, if you sent out it, we put you on our email newsletter or something like that, rather than on the brand social.
I think one thing that's hard about social media too, and I want to get your opinion on this, and I know you talked about it, but like most people are on social media, they see these like North, now like quotation North Star brands like Duolingo, Wendy's, like these like ones that are just doing a great job in their space, and they come back to social media managers like, why can't we do this? Like, I want to be like this, or we should be like this, or even like social media managers that are new to like the spaces are looking at, I want to do this strategy. Could you give like just like a step back and say like, hey, this is why you shouldn't do this, or like, or how you must think about social media before even thinking about, hey, we'd be like Wendy and Duolingo.
Your brand is unique and you deserve a unique strategy. There's already one Duolingo. There's already one Wendy's. There's not going to be another, even though so many people try. That's not to say you can't be funny, you can't be snarky, you can't develop your own brand voice. But, what works for one brand isn't going to work for everyone. And those, like, it's like, I at the risk of like, I don't want to insult anybody's abilities, but it's like the difference between like minor league and major league baseball. Like those guys are the majors, right? They, but that doesn't mean you can't do something that's very effective and works really well. It's not going to work for every single brand. And you need to be able to adapt to the brand voice that you're working on. When I first started freelancing, my two biggest clients were working on the social media for Amazon Prime Video's Invincible animated series, which I'm still working on and love, and a startup in the quote unquote end of life industry. So what they did, it was a company, they owned forest, and you go pick out a tree, and when you passed away, that's where your ashes would be spread, and they maintained the forest. So in the morning, I was writing jokes about superheroes, making memes, making snarky replies to fans, and then in the afternoon, I'm writing about death. I'm writing about why you need to read this blog post about how to talk to your family about your wishes after you die, right? So two very different tones of voice. And I learned so much being able to adapt, because what worked on Invincible definitely wasn't going to work on, the end of life industry. So finding that voice that hits and works for your brand, you can't just like grab, oh, I'm going to do what Duolingo does, or, oh, this is this trend looks really good, we're going to use it for our brand. Not every trend works for every single brand. Not every voice works for every single brand. You have to find out what works for your brand and what your audience, and stick to it for a while.
Yeah. And also, I bet those two brands, the age difference of the audience are probably way different. The two channels that they're probably talking on are probably way different. Like, how they like receiving content is probably way different. And you're just, like, you have to also like content switch into that too. Like, hey, I'm going from maybe an audience on Twitter and Reddit and Instagram to an audience on Facebook and something else. And that's a whole different context switch as well. So it's
even for one brand, like, back to like working at the universities, like it's been a while since I worked there, but Twitter was still a big thing. Like you talk to students on Twitter and you talk to their parents on Facebook, and your posts better reflect that.
Yeah. One question I also ask everybody, and this is the last question I have for you, is on this podcast, is what's a marketing hill you would die on?
Ooh, oh man, there's a lot of hills I would die on. Oh man, for me, I think it is. I'm very opinionated in my beliefs, so there's a lot of hills that I would die on. It's that you and come back to our original thought. You need to hire an experienced social media manager. They need to be teams. The days of the single social media manager are really over, right? And newer social media managers need that. They don't need to just be thrown into the deep end of the pool without any sort of training whatsoever, even fresh out of college, even if they have a degree in social media management, until you've run social media, until you've been in the chair, you don't know how what it's going to be like. So I think we need to start building social media marketing teams and giving that on the job training to those new social media managers, and not just throwing them out to the wolves and saying, here are the passwords, go run it.
Yeah, I mean, I think people also forget that, like, more like a lot. I would say like half the job is managing internal asks and internal approvals and internal questions, and like that's why where the biggest difference I think of like some creators who like probably can crush a channel for you, but they don't have to deal with like going to legal, dealing with the managers, dealing about everybody's expectations internally, having to have a content calendar that it gets approved, make sure that posts get out at the right time, are gold on 50 different things. Like there's so many things that go into social media management that besides like I'm really good at Instagram, which is what I think people miss out all the time.
And that internal diplomacy is so hard to learn. When I first started my career, I wanted to bust in like Kool-Aid Man and just be like, oh yeah, we're gonna make some changes and blah blah blah. And you just can't do that. Like it just is not going to work. You have to do that little by little. You have to know the right people to talk to. You've got to find an advocate within the business that will sing your praises in rooms that you're not in and do all of those things. So yeah,
Yeah, I've
it's a
seen a lot of
tough skill to learn.
I've seen a lot of people who like say like the marketing manager or some manager wants that on the marketing team, but they just get shut down by leadership or shut down like we can't post like this or legal won't let me post like this. And you have to you even though you know what will be successful, you have to find a way to work in the guardrails of the company or go to a different company unless you could be very good at what you said, advocating like we need to do this, we need to do this. And that takes time and politicking and internally to make sure that everybody's on your side and you have a bunch of people on your side too. Like
I'll add one thing before we go. Like those guardrails are not a bad thing. They're there to protect you, and they're not there to stifle your creativity. If anything, let the limitations like guide your creativity to go, okay, I have like a set number of things I can do within this. Where can I be creative? Like it's kind of like, I used to play guitar, so like I have all kinds of guitar references, but like Kurt Cobain, not the greatest guitar player ever, but the notes that he knew how to do awesome things with. And that's the same thing. Like as a social media manager, you work within limitations and you play with the notes that you have, right?
Yeah, I mean, for marketing in general, I think the best marketing plays like you need guardrails to be successful because if you can go off because you need that brand strategy, that overall marketing strategy, those lines to know how to play the game. Otherwise, you could be not playing the game how you think you could be playing the game and then failing. At least you have a rule book and a game that you could play. And you know that it might be hard to be successful, but that's where they're hiring you for your creativity to be successful in that, in those guardrails. So I agree with you. I think more marketing departments actually need to like even communicate those guardrails better to make social media managers or any managers or directors or anything to be more successful. Otherwise, it's hard to win if you don't know like the rules of the game
exactly
internally. Cool. Well, thank you so much for joining. Also, I want to ask you one last thing. Where can people find you, what you're doing, all that good stuff?
Yeah, I'm all over the place. I'm pretty much on every single social platform as at JS Stansel. I'm most active on LinkedIn these days, but also active on Instagram and TikTok. My book is coming out in September. Is 10 Principles of Effective Social Media Management. It's available for pre-order on Amazon or wherever you find your books. And that's probably those are the best places to find me.
Well, everybody go give him a follow if you want to learn why social media management and how to be successful in social media management. He'll give you the playbook. And you've been in so many different industries that you've seen so much different things. And I do agree. If one takeaway of this podcast that I advocate for too is like find a great social media manager and pay them well and give them resources to be successful in that role as well. Not only pay them up, but give them resources to be successful because it's not a one-man person job. If your goal is to be successful on social media, like if you want to be just average and not just have a couple posts up, do whatever you want. But if you want to be a success and grow your business and be a name out there that is recognized, pay the right person. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.